We're going to look today at the second obstacle, which has to do with the purpose of the body. Now, understand, by itself, the body doesn't have an agenda or a plan or motivation. It's the mind that assigns a purpose to the body. And if you don't assign a purpose, the ego rushes in and uses the body for three purposes: for pride, for pleasure, and for attack. This is the way in which the ego adapts the body to a confused world. And those purposes have emotional consequences. This linkage between our chosen purpose and our emotions is largely unconscious, unexamined, and unchecked. And with Course in Miracles, we learn to examine it and put it in check. So we can hope for happiness, but when we link our emotions to the ego, it results in disillusionment and depression, or worse. Yet we have the power to choose a different purpose and can find it with faith and spiritual guidance. A brighter vision is ahead for us, but first we have to surmount the obstacles to our interior world. Hello and welcome to Miracles on High Plains. I'm your host, Jonica, and our reader for today is David S.
We said that peace must first surmount the obstacle of your desire to get rid of it. Where the attraction of guilt holds sway, peace is not wanted. The second obstacle that peace must flow across, and closely related to the first, is the belief that the body is valuable for what it offers. For here is the attraction of guilt made manifest in the body and seen in it. This is the value that you think peace would rob you of. This is what you believe that it would dispossess and leave you homeless. And it is this for which you would deny a home to peace. This sacrifice you feel to be too great to make, too much to ask of you. Is it a sacrifice or a release? What has the body really given you that justifies your strange belief that in it lies salvation? Do you not see that this is the belief in death? Here is the focus of the perception of atonement as murder. Here is the source of the idea that love is fear.
So a lot of questions raised right here in this introduction, and many of them center around what do we value? And specifically with respect to the body, what value is it there? And there are two narratives that are possible in response to that. And so our purpose today is to look at the obstacles that the ego erects. So we're focused on that. And the ego assigns a value or a purpose to the body. And then, this is key message for today, and then wants you to believe that the pursuit of peace will result in your sacrificing the values that it offers. So ego is competitive. So it would say, well, either you get the values that the ego offers, or you lose them for the price of peace. In the ego's mind, nothing is free. You have to pay a price for it. And we'll refer to that as what is the sacrifice you have to make for peace. For the ego wants you to believe you're going to lose precious values in your choice for peace. And that all becomes has an effect on your emotions. Like, what do you really want? What is it you desire? What matters to you? And so we will, as we look into this, it's whiz going to come down to a question of the ego's view of the body or the Holy Spirit's. And the question is the whole pursuit of peace a sacrifice? Or is it a release from a complex state of thought and emotions that's very familiar to us, that's promoted throughout the world, and is therefore become, so to speak, seems normal. And we learn, in fact, it's not normal at all. It's very abnormal. It's very maladaptive. And we will look further into those emotional implications as we go on. Noel?
Why is guilt attractive? First paragraph.
Yes. Excellent question. Matter of fact, it's fundamental. Both the question that Noel asked is fundamental, but it's also a fundamental assertion of A Course in Miracles. So and it can be narrated more than one way. Here's one way, is that basically there are two emotional states, love and fear, and you're always partial in any given moment to one or the other. So let's say the emotional state you're in is centered in fear. Well, now the mind never stops. The mind will create messages that it will send out that are consistent with fear. And it will look for evidence that what the mind believes in fear in that moment, that is true. It'll selectively filter what it perceives in the world and look for evidence that, yes, fear is justified. And so what your question is why is guilt attractive? Well, would you put guilt in the bucket of love or the bucket of fear? Clearly, it's associated with fear. And so here's the line from the previous section, Noel, that speaks directly to what you asked. It says, guilt creeps in where happiness has been removed and substitutes for it. Said other ways, in the absence of happiness, which is unhappiness, discontent, feeling lack, guilt creeps in without your doing anything else to initiate it. It fills the vacuum. All right, we're going to go on and then we'll pause again for some more comments.
The Holy Spirit's messengers are sent far beyond the body, calling the mind to join in holy communion and be at peace. Such is the message that I gave them for you. It is only the messengers of fear that see the body, for they look for what can suffer. Is it a sacrifice to be removed from what can suffer? The Holy Spirit does not demand you sacrifice the hope of the body's pleasure. It has no hope of pleasure, but neither can it bring you fear of pain. Pain is the only sacrifice the Holy Spirit asks, and this he would remove.
Mhm. So as we said a moment ago, there's only two emotions, and therefore there are only two sets of messages. One's the messages of hope and innocence and of love. The other are messages of fear, of guilt, and pain. Okay. And the Holy Spirit, very much in her quest for our healing, wants to remove notions of pain from our awareness, doesn't want us to walk around pained there. So she's definitely on that, has that as a mission. With regards to pleasures, she has no opinion. She has no horse in that race. But the ego will have you believe that you can't have pleasures if you pursue peace, and therefore peace is a very high price to pay for pursuing it, because you lose all pleasure. There's one more thing that I could have said earlier. It goes back, some of you may be aware of Sigmund Freud's pleasure pain principle, talked about around the turn of the 19th century. So it's been around. The Course in Miracles, we will face it again later on, and that is, if I'll use first person terms, if I throw my lot with the ego and choose to believe that my body exists for pride, for pleasure, and for attack, then a consequence of using my body that way is that I also view it as a source of my pain. It's a pleasure plane contrast or spectrum. Follows naturally one from the other. So pain is the only thing the Holy Spirit is here to help us remove. So let's go on. We do have a lot of reading, by the way.
Peace is extended from you only to the eternal, and it reaches out from the eternal in you. It flows across all else. The second obstacle is no more solid than the first, for you want neither to get rid of peace nor limit it. What are these obstacles that you would interpose between peace and its going forth, but barriers you place between your will and its accomplishment? You want communion, not the feast of fear. You want salvation, not the pain of guilt. And you want your Father, not a little mound of clay, to be your home. In your holy relationship is your Father's Son. He has not lost communion with him, nor with himself. When you agreed to join your brother, you acknowledged this is so. This has no cost, but it has release from cost.
Mm-hmm. So there's a spiritual principle here that is easy to understand. I want to make sure we don't miss it. Peace is looking to join with other eternal attributes of spirit. So peace naturally joins with love, with joy, with happiness, with creativity, naturally. And Kim, by the way, this is in reference to what we spoke about before the meeting began. So peace flows from deep within you and seeks to flow outward, if you will, and extend and join with all those other eternal attributes we just mentioned. it would seem that there are obstacles in the way. However, they are obstacles of the ego. They are simply temporary delaying factors at best. They consist of nothing true and real and lasting. They are but illusions that are attempting to persuade you to abandon the quest for peace and instead join in its opposite. And your willpower has a vital role to play in this process of peace emerging from deep within you, because it really has to do with barriers that our ego, little self, places in our mind that would interfere with the natural expression of our divine will. Let me say, Kim, this is, we recalled it creative union earlier. Let me say it one more time. Peace wants to join with the highest parts of yourself, which is where your true will, your divine will is fully manifest and expressed. And these barriers are but false beliefs that the little part of your mind that would like to have it your own way and be independent of the creator, that little part of your mind places these little objections along the way. That's what the barriers are, placed between your will and the accomplishment of your divine will. Overcoming this has no cost. What it does instead is it helps release you from the costs of lack of peace. Lack of peace is costly to your happiness.
You have paid very dearly for your illusions, and nothing you have paid for brought you peace. Are you not glad that heaven cannot be sacrificed, and sacrifice cannot be asked of you? There is no obstacle that you can place before our union, for in your holy relationship, I am there already. We will surmount all obstacles together, for we stand within the gates and not outside. How easily the gates are opened from within to let peace through, to bless the tired world. Can it be difficult for us to walk past barriers together when you have joined the limitless? The end of guilt is in your hands to give. Would you stop now to look for guilt in your brother?
We should recognize that there's a guarantee here. There's a guarantee that comes not from this world and from time. It's a guarantee that comes from eternity, from heaven. It's a guarantee that's been proven out throughout creation. And that is, there is no obstacle that can be placed before your creative union with all things. There are already souls that have reached there. They have passed through all the obstacles. It's a proven plan that can be surmounted not by yourself. You need guidance here. We all need guidance, but it can be surmounted together. So I've likened these obstacles to sandcastles, like sandcastles that children build on the edge of the shoreline. Not a one of them remains standing. They are, without exception, all washed away. The same thing is true of the obstacles the ego would attempt to erect.
Let me be to you the symbol of the end of guilt, and look upon your brother as you would look on me. Forgive me all the sins you think the Son of God committed. And in the light of your forgiveness, he will remember who he is and forget what never was. I ask for your forgiveness, for if you are guilty, so must I be. But if I surmounted guilt and overcame the world, you were with me. Would you see in me the symbol of guilt or the end of guilt? Remembering that what I signify to you, you see within yourself.
What Christ signifies to you, you see within yourself. I think that's so entirely consistent with everything we've learned about self-concepts and perception of self in the Course in Miracles. So let's wade into deeper waters for a moment. It says, if I surmounted guilt and overcame the world, we're referring to the life that Christ lived as Jesus 2,000 years ago, because he's referring to himself. It says, if I overcame the world, you were with me. Well, from an ego point of view, that is a little hard to accept. But we don't want to look at that statement from the ego's point of view. We want to look at it from a point of view of spirit. So let's do this together. How many minds are there in the universe? One mind. Where is that mind located? Yeah, it's everywhere. It's everywhere and at once. And was that any different 2,000 years ago? No. So the mind of the universe was with Christ 2,000 years ago when he overcame guilt. That's pretty easy to believe. And so the only thing that remains is the idea of you were with him. And it comes down to, how do you understand you to be? When we say you, clearly your flesh and blood was not there 2,000 years ago. But we just said that the one mind of all creation was there 2,000 years ago. And as a result, you are part of the one mind of creation. Therefore, your mind was with him. That's a little deep. It's certainly not the way scientists and people of the world regard these ideas of self, because I'm not telling you anything. The world thinks of yourself as existing only in your body for the short period of time your body's alive on Earth. It was very narrow, very limited, and since all bodies eventually curtail and pass away, the world believes that you will pass away along with the body. A Course in Miracles is helping us to correct those beliefs and realize that that we are a part of the one mind of creation that has been in existence forever. We have forgotten. I'm not saying that we're all walk around every moment of the day remembering these things, but this is what the restoration of the memory of God is to restore the memory of those things which have been known forever. But we'll save that for another day. Let's make sure we just work on attaining full peace for now.
From your holy relationship, truth proclaims the truth, and love looks on itself. Salvation flows from deep within the home you offered to my Father and to me. And we are there together in the quiet communion in which the Father and the Son are joined. O come ye faithful to the holy union of the Father and the Son in you, and keep you not apart from what is offered you, in gratitude for giving peace its home in heaven. Send forth to all the world the joyous message of the end of guilt, and all the world will answer. Think of your happiness as everyone offers you witness of the end of sin and shows you that its power is gone forever. Where can guilt be when the belief in sin is gone? And where is death when its great advocate is heard no more?
Mm-hmm. So I think one of the strong sub-themes of this section on the obstacles to peace is this idea that your mind is always generating messages. It never sleeps. Even when you go lay down at night and lose consciousness, your mind is still generating messages. When you're aware of them, we call them dreams. And you know that when you wake up, a moment before that, you're in some other dream world full of ideas. Your mind is forever generating messages. It's really a question then of whether or not you're holding love or fear in your heart in that moment as to what is the nature of those messages. So two different messages. This is why allowing peace to overcome the obstacles in your mind is crucial, for we can never, for if we are to generate more consistently messages of love, we must put the welcome mat out for peace. We cannot close the doors of our mind to peace and also consistently generate messages of love. We need to overcome those barriers. And so here's one way of thinking about it. In heaven, where all their healing is complete, they proclaim the end of guilt and they proclaim holy innocence. In hell, they look for guilt. They look for opportunities to identify guilt and send its messages out into the world, searching for the guilty ones. Which one would you rather find yourself in? It's a choice.
Forgive me your illusions and release me from punishment for what I have not done. So will you learn the freedom that I taught by teaching freedom to your brother, and so releasing me. I am within your holy relationship, yet you would imprison me behind the obstacles you raise to freedom and bar my way to you. Yet it is not possible to keep away one who is there already. And in him, it is possible that our communion, where we are joined already, will be the focus of the new perception that will bring light to all the world contained in you.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to repeat some ideas that we read already today, is that the end of guilt is in your hands to give. Would you stop now in order to look for guilt in your brother? Or would you commit your mind to the end of guilt? What was the other one? Oh, would you see, this is Christ speaking, would you see in me the symbol of guilt or the end of guilt? Remembering that what I signify to you, you see within yourself. So it is a choice, and in a profound way, what we're really doing is welcoming the Christ within each one of us. And I don't mean the Jesus within you. What I mean is that there is the spirit, the soul, the goodness of Christ is within each one of us. And the ego is determined that you do not make contact with it, that you separate yourself from it, that you place barriers between your conscious awareness and the Christ consciousness within you. And so closing that imaginary gap, bridging over it with the truth is what this journey is all about. And so here's the vision that is talked about, so to speak, after the healing is complete, and I mean total forgiveness. It is possible that in our communion, where in spirit we are joined already, that will become the focus of the new perception. And that new perception will not be limited and kept within, but will be free to extend outward and bring light to the world. It flows from deep within you through this awareness that you are the holy child of God. And then there's no obstacles in the state we're talking about. There's no but. Why not me? There's no obstacles there. And then that flows outward to bring light to the world. I think it's intellectually easy to understand. The only thing is psychologically, there are these barriers, these obstacles that, and I know this feeling really well myself. It says, well, that's really beautiful, but I got a lot of work to do before that's true of me. There's the obstacles. Lord, help, Lord, I believe, but help me with my unbelief. Okay, so we said that with each one of these obstacles, there is an attachment to a feeling state, an emotion that is self-destructive, unhealthy. It's a miscreation of the ego. So it sources fear, and so these obstacles, this is important. These obstacles get you two ways. One, it's a misguided belief, and two, it's a misguided feeling. And they both are false messages of the ego. I call them ego graffiti. You don't want to look for truth in the graffiti associated with that's been authored by the ego. And so what we can learn is that for every one of those messages, they can be reinterpreted by the Holy Spirit. Without fail, every message of the ego can be reinterpreted by the Holy Spirit. Your workbook lessons will help you practice those messages and practice until they become your own. You're no longer saying somebody else's words, but you feel it. You are feel part of it. They speak for you. So with the second obstacle, which has to do with the body and the way the ego views the body, what stands behind it is the sick emotion of welcoming pain and activities that bring pain. And this, you'll remember, we read earlier, is the one thing the one thing the Holy Spirit is here to help you heal from, to become free of pain. And while the ego would keep you enmeshed in a pain-centric form of identity and purpose.
Your little part is but to give the Holy Spirit the whole idea of sacrifice and to accept the peace he gives instead, without the limits that would hold its extension back and so would limit your awareness of it. For what he gives must be extended if you would have its limitless power and use it for the Son of God's release. It is not this you would be rid of, and having it, you cannot limit it. If peace is homeless, so are you, and so am I. And he who is our home is homeless with us. Is this your wish? Would you forever be a wanderer in search of peace? Would you invest your hope of peace and happiness in what must fail?
You know, those questions, they're so clear. It seems to me in this context, so clear. They speak right to our soul. Would you forever be a wanderer in search of peace? I think the reason why we're all here is that we know what it's like to wander in search of peace. We walked that path. And the question is, what will it take to not forever wander in search of peace, but to instead realize that the gifts have been given within us. And as it says here, what the Holy Spirit gives must be extended if you want its limitless power and effects. That if you want the attributes of peace to fill your mind, then they must flow through you, not be arrested by obstacles, but flow through, in order for you to participate in and benefit from the power of these gifts. So what is your little part? Very little is asked of you. Holy Spirit has the plan, the message, the emotions that are tied with it. Your little part is to rid your mind of the idea that I'm going to have to pay a heavy price for this. I'm going to lose my things that are really valuable to me. That's, again, your little part is to give the Holy Spirit that idea. Okay.
Faith in the eternal is always justified, for the eternal is forever kind, infinite in its patience, and wholly loving. It will accept you wholly and give you peace. Yet it can unite only with what already is at peace in you, immortal as itself. The body can bring you neither peace nor turmoil, neither joy nor pain. It is a means and not an end. It has no purpose of itself, but only what is given to it. The body will seem to be whatever is the means for reaching the goal that you assign to it. Only the mind can set a purpose, and only the mind can see the means for its accomplishment and justify its use. Peace and guilt are both conditions of the mind to be attained, and these conditions are the home of the emotion that calls them forth, and therefore is compatible with them.
So there's a lot here. And we don't want to just gloss over it and say, well, I didn't really get that. Let's move on. We want to pause and try, at least for as much as we can get right now. Some of the concepts are profound, but I think easy to understand. And so if you think about states like happiness, love, joy, that are desirable, peace can only unite with those states. It can't unite with hate, unforgiveness, judgment. It can only unite with what is already part of your lasting and permanent self. Peace comes from the eternal and looks to join with all that is eternal. And so it's actually a time saver if, through your efforts and your choice to overcome these obstacles to peace, the peace will automatically unite with happiness, love, and joy, and all the other attributes that come with it. It will do the work to bring them to you, but you have to let go of the obstacles. The big one we just talked about was the idea of sacrifice. All right, so and in the context of the second obstacle, remember, the body has no purpose of itself. Your mind assigns it a purpose. It only has a function that your mind gives it. Some people decide they want their bodies to be athletes. Some other people decide they want to use their body for other things. Your mind gets to choose, and the body will seem to do whatever is given to it, the goal that you assign to it. It's very simple, okay? And remember that the Holy Spirit would use your body to communicate hope and healing and helpfulness to others. It's different than the ego's purpose. So the mind sets the purpose, and only the mind can see the means for accomplishing that purpose. So there's two elements. This is universal truth throughout the course. There's your purpose, which you have to get straight first. You have to know what direction you're headed, where you're going. And then once you've decided on your goal, your purpose, then if it's a holy purpose, the means will be provided. The path, the steps that you are to take today and tomorrow in order to achieve that purpose will be provided. So to and this is the here was the insight that I really got from this round of teaching here, was that there are two possible conditions of your mind, and only two. It can be at peace, or you can feel guilty. And you've experienced both of them already. So this is not a surprise, but we didn't know that there's only two. And these conditions stem from the underlying emotions that the mind is entertaining, whether it be love or fear. So obviously love fosters peace and fear fosters guilt. That you do have a choice. Matter of fact, that must be mastered in order to be free. So there's an underlying emotion that affects the conditions of your mind. And then based on the condition of your mind, you will project those beliefs outward and look for proof that they are true. This is the laws of perception that we've seen. So the foundation for it all, however, is, are you entertaining love or fear in your mind? Because that determines the conditions, which determines the messages that you send out. So I'll say one more thing. The first, especially chapter 2 of the textbook, is all about your role in stopping fear from flooding your mind. The foundation to this course begins with not allowing fear to continue to flood your mind. And I've often, for years, I only taught the first 6 chapters of the text, because that foundation was, I really believed, all that really mattered. You got to get the foundation right, other things will take care of themselves. So we're reviewing that here, but it remains equally as true as it always has. So we're talking about which condition you entertain in your mind when we go into this next paragraph.
But think you which it is that is compatible with you. Here is your choice, and it is free. But all that lies in it will come with it, and what you think you are can never be apart from it. The body is the great seeming betrayer of faith. In it lies disillusionment and the seeds of faithlessness, but only if you ask of it what it cannot give. Can your mistake be reasonable grounds for depression and disillusionment, and for a relative attack on what you think has failed you? Use not your error as the justification for your faithlessness. You have not sinned, but you have been mistaken in what is faithful. And the correction of your mistake will give you grounds for faith.
Mm-hmm. So this may be, I think, if you fully appreciate this paragraph here, then you might have a grasp of the entire section. So we're talking about 2 states. Your mind being in a peaceful state or a guilty state, which depends on whether there's love or fear in your mind. Think on what it is that is compatible with you. It really is your choice of which one you want to go for. By the way, there are no neutral thoughts. Neutrality is an illusion of emptiness, typically of lack of anything. I'm just feeling blah. I don't have any feelings. No, that's a lack of love. And so this choice, with it lies all that will cascade from that choice. And so the ego would invite you to think of the body as being a source of bringing you happiness. This is one of the obstacles to peace, is where do you find your happiness? The ego says, well, let's find it in the body. Okay, so now, and we know that particularly I think of myself as a teenager, 16 years old, I would have really believed that to be true. All right, I'm going to go out and find happiness using my body. And as a result, because the body itself cannot make you happy, try and try. Maybe now you're 30, 40 years later of trying to find happiness from the body and not getting it becomes grounds for depression and disillusionment and even anger and attack, because we've been trying all those years to find happiness and haven't found it. And the mistake was that we tried to find it using the wrong means. We tried to, not that we wanted to be happy is not a mistake, that the goal was worthy, but trying to use the body as the method for bringing about happiness is the ego's plan. And so correcting that, it's simply a mistake. It's not a sin. It's simply we were misguided in our belief of what method to use. The correction of your mistake will give you the grounds of faith you can move forward again. So it seems so simple here, but yet I think so many lives are spent pursuing happiness in all the looking for love in all the wrong places. And then, not, and they will then come back and tell you they didn't find it. And so now there's depression and disillusionment and perhaps a desire not to live anymore, to give up. And because they were using the wrong means. So the Course is helping us to recognize these are simply mistakes that can be corrected with the guidance of Spirit.
It is impossible to seek for pleasure through the body and not find pain. It is essential that this relationship be understood, for it is one the ego sees as proof of sin. It is not really punitive at all. It is but the inevitable result of equating yourself with the body, which is the invitation to pain. For it invites fear to enter and become your purpose. The attraction of guilt must enter with it, and whatever fear directs the body to do is therefore painful. It will share the pain of all illusions, and the illusion of pleasure will be the same as pain.
Mm-hmm. So I mentioned Sigmund Freud's pleasure-pain principle earlier. This is not the form in which he expressed it. Okay, so I'm not equating what's said here with what his theory said. However, he did identify that there's a spectrum and there's some relationship that going on there. So for that, he deserves some credit. But even with these statements that are here, there's a logic to it that until it makes sense to your mind, you won't truly accept it until it makes sense to you. Otherwise, it becomes a statement somebody else is making that you're not really sure of. You're not really confident in it. And so part of what my role is to reformulate and reinterpret, hopefully finding ways that appeal to your understanding that you can accept. And so I've jotted some notes down here. I don't think that they capture it quite. So let me try it another way. When the ego motivation to identify with your body, to think of yourself as just flesh and blood, and use that as the limits of your concept of yourself. Well, with that come other properties that are inherent in that, one of them being that the body is going to die. The other is that the body is vulnerable to loss, to disease, to accidents, and to weakness. And so now, in addition to believing your body is who you are, all those other attributes of vulnerability and weakness and the threat of death, which we are going to get to in the third obstacle, all rush in along with it. Okay. And so, how does that relate to the idea of pain? Well, we just said that there's really only two emotions. And if you feel vulnerable and weak and threatened by attack, that is not love. That is a mild form, that is a form of anxiety, a form of suffering, a form of pain. It's mind pain. And it can result in physical pain. There are many examples in our world where it's rather obvious that physical pain results. We don't need to go over them, but just realize that these choices of how you view yourself have consequences. They become the starting point of a path that we then follow innocently, unconsciously, usually to ourselves, that we follow that has tag along effects that result in fear, vulnerability, being threatened, being willing to judge other threats, and when necessary to attack. So this choice invites fear to enter, and without you knowing it, your mind aligns with fear as your purpose, sends out messages of guilt, and there you are. You're now in the ancient prison of the ego because of the way you think of yourself mistakenly as a body. Let me pause there, see if there's any thoughts or comments or other ideas around that. Nothing could be more important to this section than grasping some of these mistakes. And we call it an ancient prison because it's been done again and again and again for forever. No, since the beginning of human experience. Felicia?
Yeah, what keeps coming up for me in the workbook is the lessons about, I say only the past, you know. My mind is preoccupied with past thoughts, see nothing as it is now. Because, that was something that I had a hard time letting go of when I first started the course. And, of course, with the Holy Spirit's help, I'm much better at it now. But, it still creeps up from time to time because, in the workbook, it says everything you look at, you know what it is because of past thoughts. But that's just what been coming up for me. If I can stay out of past thoughts and stay present.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Thank you. We all are the reason why it's in the workbook is because all of us have to deal with that in different or in our own way of teaching our mind to be present and not to get ahead of ourselves, but not to fall behind either. Yeah. Noel?
I was provoked by the number 3 of your notes down below, the attraction to pain. Underneath my complaints sometimes are the attraction to pain because to feel sorry for myself, for example, not to do something that I had planned or somebody would like me to do, and really being a martyr in a way to pain. So that's something I really need to look at and free myself of.
Yeah, and thank you. And in taking that martyrdom approach, or however we want to call it, it amplifies our suffering. It puts our mind set on this suffering as the theme that we're going through, which is makes it worse. Only makes it worse. Susie?
This sentence, it is impossible to seek for pleasure through the body and not find pain, is so much more meaningful to me, than so much more understandable coming from such a body identified person prior to the course and even through the course. And anytime I direct my body to find pleasure, albeit a party, golf, anything body identified, it's never enough. It's momentary, and it might be great one day and not good the next time. And so there's pain there at some point. And I see this now. So it's much easier for me to understand this now than it used to be. It's so impermanent. The pleasure I try to find through the body in any way, it's not lasting. And so that makes pain for me. On many levels, emotional, physical, So it's certainly not peaceful or loving. It's been my experience.
Yeah, mine too. Thank you. Aisha?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the word comfort could be a synonym for the word pleasure in terms of seeking pleasure, also the body seeking comfort. That's a question.
Yeah, so try if I could reinterpret, are we talking about safety? And
yeah, safety. I have a specific thing with my house. I sold my house and now I don't have my house, and now my mind feels guilty. Maybe I shouldn't have sold my house, and then it becomes this sort of intrusive thought. And I realize that I'm sort of stuck in that gear instead of choosing love and faith. So I wouldn't necessarily call that pleasure, but I'm seeking a comfort. Does that relate?
or we're gonna have to find out. I don't know. Good question. For all I know, it's in the next paragraph. It wouldn't shock me if it was. We'll find out. But I've written it down, and I'm sure there's an answer somewhere. Kim?
It's becoming more and more apparent to me how important it is for me to know my true eternal identity. And when I am looking externally for things that are provided for me eternally and are already there, like the fact that peace is there, it's a part of me, it's who I am, it is given to me by God. When I'm looking outward for that, I'm never going to find it. And so the point is this, it's very important for me to really know who I am in God.
Nice. And you know, as you said that, Kim, it touched off related to what Susie was saying, those comforts that Atisha, maybe you had when you're home, they didn't last. Where are they now? So by definition, they come and they go. And that would be an indication of impermanence. And so it makes me suspect that in our efforts to seek comfort in the world, orient us outward, and instead of being oriented by that which we know to be true inward. Yeah, but I like the question. I want to continue to listen for answers. Bonnie?
Yeah, in this past week, I had turned on the TV at some point, and there was a Senate subcommittee that was questioning various internet companies like Facebook and TikTok and some of those. And they were talking about the very dangerous programs that were being pushed out to the youth of our culture. And a lot of it was about equating yourself with your body shaming, that kind of thing, and sex trafficking and drugs. But I think this is something that is real in our culture, and nobody seems, these different internet companies say that they try to monitor this, but they don't. And lots of parents had pictures of sons and daughters who have died. They stood up with a picture of their son or daughter who had died because they got depressed. They didn't match up to what was being fed to them through the internet. And it's something that's very real in our society. And I don't know if it's going to get any better.
I think it's another example of the attraction to pain that's associated with using the body the way the ego would promote. We need to move on in order to try to conclude on time.
Is not this inevitable? Under fear's orders, the body will pursue guilt, serving its master, whose attraction to guilt maintains the whole illusion of its existence. This, then, is the attraction of pain. Ruled by this perception, the body becomes the servant of pain, seeking it dutifully and obeying the idea that pain is pleasure. It is this idea that underlies all of the ego's heavy investment in the body. And it is this insane relationship that it keeps hidden and yet feeds upon. To you, it teaches that the body's pleasure is happiness, yet to itself it whispers, it is death.
So, yeah, if you're taking notes, I think this is one of the most logically clear ideas that summarizes what we've been talking about. Under fear is a sponsor. The body pursues guilt. It's serving fear as the master. It's attracted to guilt by maintaining an illusory sense of what we're all about, why we're here, what is our purpose. And that puts you in a state of suffering and pain. It is a consequence of not knowing yourself, of confusion, and results in many, many distortions, some of which Bonnie mentioned just there. As we know, there's a whole world full of twisted confusion that results from people pursuing these illusions. Our purpose is not to list them out there or recite them, but to realize that this need not be. David?
Why should the body be anything to you? Certainly, what it is made of is not precious. And just as certainly, it has no feeling. It transmits to you the feelings that you want. Like any communication medium, the body receives and sends the messages that it is given. It has no feeling for them. All of the feeling with which they are invested is given by the sender and the receiver. The ego and the Holy Spirit both recognize this, and both also recognize that here the sender and receiver are the same. The Holy Spirit tells you this with joy. The ego hides it, for it would keep you unaware of it. Who would send messages of hatred and attack if he but understood he sends them to himself? Who would accuse, make guilty, and condemn himself?
So this idea may be a slap in the face to teachings that you may have heard elsewhere, because what it says is the body has no feelings of itself. So I would attempt to elaborate a little bit. We're not saying the body has no sensations. We're saying the body by itself feels neither guilt nor peace, feels neither love or fear, but the mind interprets external stimuli and sensations according to its own choice of interpretation, and then assigns feelings to them, those sensations. The mind transmits to you the feelings that you want. And so let's say you have a tingling on the back of your neck. What does that mean? Well, it's whatever you choose it to mean. It just really means the hairs on your neck are moving around. Is that good and a reassuring feeling, or is that a threat? It depends on how you choose to interpret it. So the body will just send and receive messages that the mind gives it. And if you decide that it means a threat, then that will feel real to you. This comes deeply into contrast with some other teaching systems about feelings and all. So we're asking that you just, for the moment, be willing to set them aside and realize that the mind has a significant role to play in those feeling states. So then it comes back to you have a choice of whether to entertain in your mind feelings of love or feelings of fear. Because that upon that choice, you will send messages either of hatred and attack or of joy and happiness. You essentially do these things to yourself. And that's a message a lot of people would prefer to place responsibility elsewhere rather than to realize that they are, a depressed person would rather, well, I don't want to go into it. We'll go on.
The ego's messages are always sent away from you in the belief that for your message of attack and guilt, will someone other than yourself suffer? And even if you suffer, yet someone else will suffer more. The great deceiver recognizes that this is not so, but as the enemy of peace, it urges you to send out all your messages of hate and free yourself. And to convince you this is possible, it bids the body search for pain in attack upon another, calling it pleasure and offering it to you as freedom from attack.
David,
Yeah.
Pause a moment. We're going to skip the next paragraph and go on.
It is not given to the ego's disciples to realize that they have dedicated themselves to death. Freedom is offered them, but they have not accepted it. And what is offered must also be received to be truly given. For the Holy Spirit, too, is a communication medium, receiving from the Father and offering his messages unto the Son. Like the ego, the Holy Spirit is both the sender and the receiver. For what is sent through him returns to him, seeking itself along the way and finding what it seeks. So does the ego find the death it seeks, returning it to you.
Mm-hmm. So it might not have been clear how we got from pain to death. So let's just real quick retrace that there are only two emotions, love and fear. So let's assume somehow fear has crept in, and fear partners up with guilt, making you feel guilty yourself, and that others are guilty and in opposition to you. Then there's a projection onto the body, as according to the ego's concept, this idea that brings along with it pain, and pain taken to an extreme ends in death. And so what will happen is that even after you overcome the first two obstacles, the ego has two more obstacles to stop the flow of peace to everything and everyone. And the third obstacle is your fear of death. And what we mean is the death of the body you inhabit. And the existential dread, we're not just talking about a mild form of fear. It is perhaps one of the greatest fears of all. It's the fear of what will happen when my body ceases to be. And of course, the ego has an interpretation of what will happen then. And the Holy Spirit has her interpretation of what will happen then. One is very loving and the other is very fearful. And so that leads us into the third obstacle to peace, which we will, the fear of death, which we will look at tomorrow. So the assertion of the Course is that these obstacles are universal in the minds of human beings. I'm not saying they're recognized universally, but that the lies, the graffiti of the ego, the attempt to block your relationship with loving union are universal, and that therefore it's a form of ancient prison that that need not be, that is really based on just that, a set of mythologies, a set of lies that can easily be overcome when they're looked at. Just one final comment I'll make. I've really sought over several years to apply this reading to myself. And I found, speaking honestly, slow progress. I would like to, it's all gone, and I think, now I get really honest here. For me, oh gosh, I made good progress in overcoming the sense of guilt. Made a lot of progress on obstacle number 3 with the fear of death. That doesn't really bother me, at least, not consciously at all. And made really good progress on overcoming the fear of God, obstacle 4. But this whole world seems to be structured around body identification. And I found that's where the threads of my own thoughts and feelings go way back from when I was 4 and 5 years old till now. And so there's a lot of undoing to go there. And so what I'm saying is that think of this as a journey, as a process. And it will fall away as soon as you're really ready to let go. I'm just saying, for me, the understanding and the articulation of it is not enough. There's still an inner working process that the Holy Spirit understands very well. And ultimately, the healing is done under her sponsorship. David?
I appreciate what you've said, and I'm just it's just curious to me. Okay, you skipped one paragraph in this large reading, and in that one paragraph contained a sentence that to me was one of the most meaningful sentences in the entire reading.
Let's look at it. I didn't know. I did. I didn't know. Let's look at it.
I just loved this one. You want me to just read the one line?
Yeah. While you're doing that, I'll try to pull it up on the screen for those that. No. Let's read the paragraph. That would be here, not the one that I stopped you from reading.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Hear not its madness, and believe not the impossible is true. Forget not that the ego has dedicated the body to the goal of sin and places in it all its faith that this can be accomplished. Its sad disciples chant the body's praise continually in solemn celebration of the ego's rule. Not one but must believe that yielding to the attraction of guilt is the escape from pain. Now, this is the one I love. Not one but must regard the body as himself, without which he would die, and yet within which is his death equally inevitable. I love that line.
Why is that meaningful for you?
Because what it tells you is that if you identify in any way with the body, it is death. There is no escape. It is a limited entity. And it is illusion.
Yes. Yeah, which is why it naturally follows the next obstacle is the fear of that death. So even if you overcome the centricity, the central nature of the body is yourself, there's still, well, what am I going to do without it? Susie?
I just want to say something. I thank you so much, Jonica, for what you said before. And I too, as I did this section this time, had a lot of like really big moments of that I still, not that I wouldn't, but that my attraction to pain is a lot more than I thought it was. And I have work to do, and I'm grateful to know, oh, this is why I do some of the things that I do, because I still have an attraction to pain. It's very helpful to understand, because without truly understanding it, I can't heal it. So it's very, very helpful for me.
Yeah, it's really deep work. I agree. That's why I think this is part of the universal spiritual keys to truly transcending fear and letting peace reign in our lives. Noel?
I'd like to know about the contrast between the pleasure of the body in this world and possibly a word like fulfillment. Are they opposites, or how would you define spiritual fulfillment, for example?
Yeah. Well, you got right in there. We have to clarify the levels, because the sum fulfillment might be a delicious big meal dinner at the end of the day. Well, that's on the purely physical level, and we're not against a good meal and satisfying your hunger, but what we really mean is, so let's look at fulfillment to the mind and the spirit. I really think it lies in the mind. I find a holy instant and my own healing and witnessing the healing of others to be immensely fulfilling. It feels like, oh, that's the function the Holy Spirit's given us. It's meaningful beyond measure to participate in any way in seeing a soul that was troubled by something for so long become free of it. And I really think it's in the mind arena, Noel, because I have no doubt that the spirit is infinitely full at all times, and therefore we needn't be concerned in any way. It's a given that spirit is totally united with all creation in every respect. So its fullness, its completeness, wholeness is a given. It's only the mind that fluctuates between either we know people can feel very empty, meaningless, and unfulfilled. We talked about it earlier, and by identifying with the body, or under the healing guidance of spirit, we can find holy instants, holy encounters, healing, and have our moments of great fulfillment.
The moments of fulfillment also go by, but for me, such as in helping someone else or praying for someone else or expressing creatively some truths, they're very rich. They feel deep within my being. But then I go on to something else, then my ego takes over again. It's like, oh, give me a cookie.
Back to cookies, yeah. I just wanted to say that we are told the Holy Spirit does not forget those fulfilling encounters, and that she saves them as your blessings, as your gifts. They are part of your creations. They become part of your eternal experience. They're saved forever. Nothing good is ever lost. And so, even though our conscious minds on this world may not be able to bring those memories back, they remain a part of us and are continue to affect the growth of our soul. Yeah. So it's all taken care of. Yeah, we actually carry with us more gifts than we realize. We're running into overtime, so I'm gonna let it go at that and say thank you, David, for reading. We will, obstacle number 3 is the fear of death. If you dare, it's not frightening. It's like a great mythology that appears to be the ultimate fright. And under the Holy Spirit's guidance, she will dismantle it to be seen actually as an opportunity that could be viewed as a welcoming opportunity in her light. So we'll look at that again tomorrow. Thank you, my friends. Thank you for your spiritual journey and sharing it together. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste, everybody.
Love you
Have a
all.
good
Yeah.
one.
Thank you,
Thanks,
David.
everyone.
Thank you,
Namaste.
everyone. Good night. See you tomorrow.
Night.
Good night.